Tonight, bold ideas to reshape a more just society.
There's no value for our lives.
Some calling to defund the police as protests against anti-black racism continue across America.
You can't beat COVID-19 with your eyes closed.
Fed up, the province still isn't collecting the race of COVID patients. A Toronto councillor puts his demands to the Premier in writing. And the road to the Games restarts today, where Ontario's top athletes can now start getting back to training. But we begin tonight with a live shot of the protests in Portland, Oregon. You can see quite a lot of people there, large crowds gathered for a peaceful protest. And no doubt this is becoming a familiar sight. Protesters have been taking to the streets in major cities across the United States ever since the death of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. I want to take you now to Niagara Falls in a small gesture of solidarity tonight. The lights that typically illuminate the falls went dark for an hour in a show of support for the Black community, both the Canadian and American sides going dark. The gesture also in recognition of Blackout Tuesday, a viral social media campaign that circulated widely among platforms today on social media. Premier Doug Ford said today he has never tolerated racism, but he says he believes there is a stark difference between Canada and the U.S. when it comes to race relations.
The difference between the U.S. and Canada, for the most part, we get along. We all live beside each other. We work together. We share communities. We go shopping. Believe me, it's night and day.
The thought that anti-black racism isn't as big a deal here, more of an American problem, is the kind of narrative people in Canada's Black community are trying to change. And many say bold changes are the only ones that will make a real difference. Suggestions like defunding police services, as Lisa Shing explains, redirecting that money to community supports.
Frontlines Toronto has been supporting young people in the Western and Lawrence area for 36 years, from after-school programs to volunteering opportunities. Lately, the conversations between Executive Director Station Federick and those youth have been tough ones.
You know, there's no value for our lives. It's very, very triggering for many who have been, victims of, police brutality.
Now, as memorials grow and protests continue for George Floyd after he was killed in police custody, some are calling for a redistribution of police funding to organizations like Frontlines.
Rather than simply providing after-school services, educational services, extracurricular activities and sports activities for young people in disadvantaged neighborhoods, we instead have a large amount of funding going to gang intervention prevention initiatives, which are doing the very types of things that I mentioned, but with the involvement of the police.
Some experts say police have been tasked with doing too much in recent years.
Not only are the police ill-equipped to do many of those things, but when they're spending their time doing so many different things, they're not actually keeping community members safe.
Back in 2011, the then chair of the Toronto Police Services Board wrote a paper essentially advocating for a leaner police force. It was an unpopular opinion at the time that suggested hiring fewer police officers, since that's the bulk of its billion-dollar budget.
Ask yourself, is that armed, highly paid police officer the right resource for that function? Based on that analysis, police boards and municipalities need to come to a determination as to how many armed uniformed police officers they need.
Advocates are echoing these sentiments now in the wake of Floyd's death, including Frederick, who says any extra funding would retain staff and help youth in the community.
The lack of funding really breaks down the core fabric of what we're trying to do in the community by building long-lasting relationships with these young people so that they can grow and be, strong and confident people in society.
Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Black and other racialized people are also being victimized by COVID-19. But other than some preliminary data in places like Toronto, province-wide, we still aren't collecting the race of coronavirus patients. Tonight, an escalation in demands to collect that data now, and why one health expert says to not collect race stats with COVID is racist. Natalie Nanowski has this story.
For the past month, Toronto has been collecting data on who contracts COVID-19 and calling on the province to do it too.
And what we found was that the 5 hardest hit neighborhoods for COVID in the city of Toronto are neighborhoods that have high rates of both poverty and high rates of visible minorities.
Councillor Joe Cressley finally put that demand in writing today, sending a letter to Premier Doug Ford's government.
You can't beat COVID-19 with your eyes closed, and in the absence of race-based and income-based data, that's exactly what this province is trying to do.
Since early April, the government and Public Health Ontario has been fielding tough questions. Why it hasn't been amassing data based on race and socioeconomic status. At first, Ontario's top doctor said the elderly and the immunocompromised were the focus of data collection regardless of their background. But a month ago, he changed his course, committing to collecting race-based data with COVID-19. But 4 weeks later and tonight, the province says, we are in the process of working with public health and privacy experts to determine how best to collect this data across all public health units. One healthcare expert says the province is dragging its feet, pivoting to months-old data from the UK and the US showing people of color are disproportionately affected by COVID-19.
We're seeing in other parts of the world that not being white is a very significant risk factor, either to get infected with COVID or to die of it. It's, to me, an outright racist decision not to collect those data in Canada.
Another failure in understanding the spread of the disease is contact tracing. Atran points out that Ethiopia has done better than Canada.
The city of Addis Ababa, the national capital, screened millions of people for COVID in a few weeks. Toronto hasn't done that. Montreal hasn't done that.
He feels if the federal and provincial governments don't improve their data and tracing, economic hubs like Toronto could be locked down for months. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to an update on the exclusive story we brought you last night about the positive COVID test that didn't get flagged to public health for proper contact tracing. Mike Crawley first broke this story yesterday and led the charge for answers today.
The hundreds of positive tests that went unreported were conducted by the William Osler Health System, mostly at this drive-through assessment center in Etobicoke. The samples were processed by the lab at Mount Sinai. According to the province, sometimes the labs inform public health of the positive tests, sometimes it's the job of the assessment center.
There were about 700 cases that were not reported to public health due to misunderstanding between the hospital and the lab that conducted the tests. However, that has been rectified to make sure that it won't happen again.
Even as the health minister confirms the accuracy of CBC's reporting about the mix-up, the premier praises the province's testing system.
I want to thank the public health folks and Ontario Health and everyone out there doing the testing. They've really ramped it up. Our testing has gone up. We have a great testing strategy.
Ontario Health is in charge of the province's COVID-19 lab system. It's a new provincial agency created by the Ford government. It says it takes full responsibility for the mix-up and says it is sorry for what happened.
We have fixed the situation and everyone is very clear on their reporting obligations.
What's not clear? How many of the unreported positives are still to be added to the COVID-19 case count? Ontario's average number of new cases daily has moved like a roller coaster this past month. It trended down in early May, up in the middle of the month, then back down again, but in the past few days, it's rising.
To have 700 test results not be reported properly and then not be able to contact trace those raises serious concerns about the province's reopening plan if we can't get this right.
This latest testing controversy shows the flaws in Ontario's health technology, according to this expert.
We're sort of relying on systems that are set up to be susceptible to human error. And so we're getting the result that the systems are designed to produce, which is we're getting mistakes, and it sets us back.
Today, 446 new cases reported in the province, the highest number in nearly a month. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
A key plank to the province's testing strategy is to make it easier to get a test. Today, the second of 5 pop-up testing centers got underway at a church in Markham, or on Markham Road in Scarborough.
So we're coming into some of the hardest hit areas where people may be afraid to come into the hospital environment to have the test completed. So we like to come into the community, let them know that we're here with them, and give them a safe area to be tested.
With 8 nurses on duty swabbing, they can process hundreds of people. The plan is to open up pop-ups in other areas deemed hot spots, like some parts of Etobicoke and North York. The next Scarborough site to open is on Thursday in Malvern at Lester B. Pearson Collegiate. Long-term care homes have been the spotlight recently as an epicenter of COVID-19 deaths. But now one Toronto home with no coronavirus cases is being taken over. As Angelina King found out, the buyer has recently become the target of lawsuits and scathing criticism.
Please do not let it happen. This is not right.
82-year-old Hei Ki Min is begging the province to reject Rika Care Centre's application to take over Rose of Sharon. Her husband has been a resident for 4 years after being on the wait list for more than 3.
Since then, my husband is so settled. He likes here, and then I am so happy.
No transport! No transport! The concern shared by the larger Korean-Canadian community. Some of Rika's homes are among the hardest hit by COVID-19 in Ontario. The Canadian military had been called into Eatonville, where they reported seeing COVID-19 positive residents allowed to wander, putting others at risk of exposure, and Hawthorne Place, where they say residents were not being fed for hours or bathed for several weeks. In Rika's 3 hardest hit homes, there is a total of 115 COVID-19 cases. Rose of Sharon has 0.
It may be an experienced seniors housing operator, but that experience, in fact, is deplorable.
Rika says it's ensuring homes have the resources and tools to provide a comfortable and enriching environment. It says most of their homes have been successful at keeping COVID-19 at bay. Rose of Sharon is the only Korean long-term care home in Ontario. Here, staff speak the language, serve traditional food, and organize cultural activities. There's concern that will be lost if Rika takes over.
It is not qualified to provide culturally sensitive care, as it already permits abusive and inappropriate behavior in non-culturally specific homes.
Rika says it looks forward to carrying on the traditions while providing excellent care to the Korean community. The sale is conditional on the province approving the license transfer, which is still being reviewed. The topic coming up today in question period.
We will make sure that it is a thoughtful process and adheres to what is required for this home and for the residents.
When the home was for sale in 2017, the Korean community raised $3.5 million in just 3 months to put in a bid, but Rika won. They hope this can be a second chance.
It is our hope of creating a new future on solid footing, led by members raised and
Exactly when the sale could go through isn't public information, but the province must first hold public consultations, and that process hasn't started yet. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
An historic moment to show you now from the University of Toronto. Chika Oriua addressed the medical school as valedictorian.
One of my personal heroes is a former First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama. In her memoir, she wrote, "If you don't get out there and define yourself, you'll be quickly and inaccurately defined by others." And so, as we pause to reflect on the past 4 years and ponder on the next, perhaps we should ask, how have we defined ourselves, and how will we continue to do so as physicians in this world?
A great message there. Now, when she started medical school at U of T 4 years ago, she was the only Black person in a class of 259 students. Today, she graduated atop them all as valedictorian, becoming just the second Black woman valedictorian and the first woman in 14 years to receive the honor. All right, after the break, Canada's elite athletes are getting back to the gym as high-performance sports facilities start reopening. We'll have that story after the break, plus a very busy night for Colette. Colette, what's the weather looking like right now?
Oh boy, Chris, it has been a busy night. Yes, just after our supper hour newscast started, watching all the storms bubbling up. See all those blue strikes? Those are the lightning strikes associated with these thunderstorms. I will tell you where they are now and where we still have some severe thunderstorm warnings coming up after the break.
Oof, the nice weather we saw today certainly did not stick around tonight. The skies over Toronto alight tonight as severe thunderstorms passed through. Let's get right to Colette Kennedy now. And Colette, these sorts of storms could be potentially dangerous weather situations for people.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. That's what we're talking about when we get into severe thunderstorm warnings. Watch means the conditions are ripe for it. Warning means they are happening, they are occurring or imminent, and they were certainly occurring in those lightning strikes, some of the biggest issues with these storms. Now, there are still some warning areas, and that's right around Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, where we still have a few cells there with an impact there. The other areas that are in the watch, including the city, I think those are going to be dropped pretty quickly by Environment Canada as we're finally seeing things really just clearing that north shore of Lake Ontario, and a lot of improvement. These started earlier this evening and then rolled very quick movers, rolling southeast at about 60 to 75 kilometers an hour. There you see the lightning strikes. So with these particular storms, it's been the lightning, the electricity associated with them, but also some of the hail, nickel to about golf ball sized hail being reported with the storms. A closer look just shows you along the lakeshore a few showers left, but those heavy downpours now pushing away. Not so the case in the Niagara region, where you're still going to be feeling the impact of this over about the next hour, and then they'll be clearing out there too. So that's the big picture, that everything is now clearing and we're going to have a break through the overnight. Some patchy fog certainly possible. The daytime highs today, some of that heating we got into the afternoon helped to fuel these storms. So if you think, oh, it didn't really feel like 27, that actually came at 8 o'clock where we hit our high because of some of those winds pushing the warmer air in. Now those have shifted around to the northwest and our temperature has dropped down and we're sitting at 18 degrees. So we'll get this clearing overnight. But by tomorrow morning, in fact, in the wee morning hours, back towards southwestern Ontario, we're likely to see some development there of not just showers, but possibly some thunderstorms. By 10 a.m., maybe still a few showers around the GTA. Early morning showers are the best bet here, but then we get into nice clearing. Still to the south, some stronger storms, hoping to keep those down there to the south. But we have to watch for what may happen in the afternoon with a return, especially to the east and to the southwest of the city. We have the best chance of seeing some showers coming back. For the most part, we should get into some really nice clearing for us, not only for later in the day tomorrow, but boy, oh boy, the setup for Thursday is looking very good too, with a lot of sunshine. Some quieter conditions after a very busy and active night tonight. Overnight in southwestern Ontario, way above seasonal, some isolated storms, but it's more towards tomorrow morning, and then a few isolated ones in the afternoon are possible, but really morning hours are going to be the trickier ones. Overnight in the GTA, I mentioned that we could have a bit of reduced visibility. I'd just like you to know that, especially for our essential workers, if you do have some shift work that you're doing. So watch out for some reduced visibility there. And then into tomorrow, we may see a few showers popping back up, but primarily we're getting into a clearing trend into the afternoon. 26 for the high. There's that beautiful day on Thursday, and 28 with sunshine. At this point for Friday, it actually looks pretty good. It's kind of late day into the evening, the timing right now where some showers move in. And then the weekend is just a bit more comfortable. The temperatures come down and the dew points come down, so the air mass won't be very sticky, Chris.
Just had to get through tonight.
Yes, what a busy night. Boy, oh boy.
Certainly. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a Trane.
Many of Canada's top Olympic and Paralympic athletes will slowly start getting back into the gym in the coming weeks. This after the province set out guidelines last month for high-performance sports facilities to start reopening. As Greg Ross tells us, the first in the country to invite athletes back was the Canadian Sports Institute here in Scarborough.
They're back. Sort of.
With that, I'm excited to say that we have a number of our Olympic athletes on today.
The Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, Lisa MacLeod, taking part in this Zoom call this morning, letting some of Canada's Olympians and Paralympians know they once again have a place to train. Starting today, athletes can book 1-hour strength and conditioning sessions with the Canadian Institute of Sport Ontario, which operates out of the Toronto Pan Am Centre. Great news for wheelchair basketball player Nikola Gonchin, who admits he has a lot of lost time to make up for.
Man, it's been almost 3 months since I've lifted a weight that's heavier than 40 pounds. So
I cannot wait to get back to training in a world-class environment.
But it's not exactly going to be business as usual.
Following all the various protocols here in the gym.
And that may take a little getting used to.
We have developed protocols and strict safety and hygiene standards using the return to sport risk assessment and mitigation tool checklist.
New guidelines include athletes must stay at least 2 meters apart. Only 6 athletes will be allowed in the facility at one time, and they will only have access to the strength and conditioning area. Locker rooms, change rooms, and shower areas will remain closed.
Training will be a lot smaller than normal, but that's to be expected.
The goal is for them to be able to get back in shape while at the same time staying safe.
We are confident that the modifications that we have made to our training center will allow our high-performance athletes in Ontario to return to train in the safest possible way.
At least 6 more training facilities are expected to open up across the country in the coming weeks, including Milton's Pan Am Velodrome. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, this humpback whale you can see in your screen there is making waves in an unusual spot. We'll have that story plus more of these incredible pictures after the break. Finally for us tonight, a fascinating new visitor to Montreal has been making quite a splash around this city for several days now. This wayward humpback whale was first spotted near Montreal's Old Port on Saturday, and it's been hanging around ever since. Wow, very neat to see. Marine experts say they've never seen a whale of this size so far south on the St. Lawrence, and that it may be disoriented, but so far it has not been showing any signs of distress. And that is our show for tonight. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and Mike Wise is back here tomorrow night at 11. We'll leave you now with some more pictures from the lightning storm over our city earlier this evening. Have a great night.